want to show you, so we have a clipping path, and that clipping path in InDesign was created by doing object, clipping path, options, like we did earlier in the past video is in there as well. But also what you can do is go into convert clipping path to frame. And let's do that. Oops, sorry. I forgot. I had both of the, I apologize. I had both of the text box and the image selected. That's not a good idea. You want to actually have just the clipping path selected. So I apologize. Clipping path again and convert clipping path to frame now. And now it did it. So what I'm trying to tell you here is right now, if I, for example, go in and do Command D and actually grab a different image, like the elephant, and say open, now that elephant shows up, but the frame is the shape of the little man. Isn't that cool? Do you want me guys to redo it? So after I went and, sorry, I'm going to get out. After I went, I selected my image. I had that clipping path that I made through object clipping path option. I also went and said, okay, I'm going to select this guy, and now I'm going to go and say the clipping path needs to also be, oh, now it's grayed out because I think it's already made into a, I apologize, I should undo, I had already done it. Okay, I can see that now it's still a clipping path because if I zoom in, guys, you see that brown edge right here, right, that I can still edit with that white arrow. So if I go in the white arrow, let me edit it and make sure it's true. That is a clipping path. Yep, it is, because you can see that I can still edit it. So this is still my clipping path. And when I have him selected, I have it selected, I apologize. You can go in object, clipping path, and instead of an option that makes it create that clipping path, you can say I want to convert it to a frame. So now this is a frame. That means if I go and do Command D and bring in a different image, and I say open, now that image shows up, but within the shape of that clipping path I made. So that's kind of interesting as well. Now remember that in InDesign, I'm going to go here and prove it to you, you can create frames of any shape. So if I go with a pen tool, for example, and I create like anything, I was going to create a heart, but then I forgot. I said, I'm going to make a heart, but I'm going to make a goofy heart. So I'm going to go here and create this weird shape. At this moment, it's just a shape. So I can go in and say, I'm going to make it blue. So you can obviously create an InDesign effect that are like that. You can play with transparency. Up here in the options, you can say, I want it 61% or 100%. So this could be simply a shape. But it could also be, actually, if you go under Object Content, it could also be a frame. Right now it's unassigned because it's just a shape. But you can say, hey, look, I want this to be a graphic instead. So if I do that, now you see this X shows up. Notice though, I want to show you another thing. If I go and actually choose text instead of the X, you get this different, a bounding box with these little squares. That means this is a frame ready to host a text. Versus if I go in here and I choose that content, and I'm going to make a graphic because it's kind of more rewarding when you place a graphic into here and you see how it really, the shape you created with the pen tool is the frame. It clips that graphic. So if I go and I do Command D now and I browse to anything I want like this, now you can see that your frame is indeed the shape you made with the pen tool. So you can create your own crazy shaped frames if you want. You don't have to be stuck, like many people think, to the square. So if you do Command D right now though, and I grab the image and I say open and I place it, sure it's going to be a square. And the frame is going to be a square because I didn't create anything that I did. If I had something active that was a different shape and I did Command D, now it would take that shape. The frame would be that shape. Any questions so far? So let's talk a little bit about text formatting here. So if I go and I select text in InDesign, just like we did in Illustrator, guys, you probably remember, you can then go up here in this case, in the Illustrator was Command T to get to the text palette, but also Illustrator had options up here that allowed you to format text. So you can go in here and say, look, I want it to be Optima. Or you, by the way, can go and highlight the text and use the arrow keys to make it any typeface you have in your system. You guys can see that I'm just using the arrow keys going through those typefaces that I see right here. But I'm going to go back. Let me actually go with maybe more like Optima. That is a little bit easier. In fact, you can also type. If you type the first 3, it will take you to that typeface that you have in mind. So you can, for example, type that and say, hey, I will want certain sentences in my document to have this formatting. And I want it to be, for example, you know, Enrique is so strict about you want to not only just set the point type, but you definitely need to give it a leading and a tracking. So I'm going to give it 11, maybe 15, and 11 and 15. And right here, I'm going to give it a little bit of a tracking by doing, for example, 5. So let's say I like this formatting and I want it to be repeated multiple times. So what I can do is I can go under Window, and somewhere you can find styles. Right here, styles. And you have different kinds. Let's stick for now to paragraph styles. They all work the same way in terms of how you make them anyway. That is, you'll have a paragraph style palette that I'm going to pull out right here. And by default, you have certain styles already kind of set up for you. But what you really want to do is, through this or through this, you want to actually create a new style. So you can go under the box right here and say, I want to create a new paragraph style. And how do you want to call it? Let's say I want to call it Optima quote. I'm going to say underscore quote. I like to, instead of spacing, putting underscores for some reason. And that's all you want it to be. Now, notice the setting. It says, is a normal text, but it has Optima sign. And so it's part of the category normal because it is part of the body of my text. It's not a title. It's nothing special. It's part of the body of my text. But it is Optima, size 11, leading 15, and tracking 5. And I'm going to say OK. So having that selected, I'm going to actually turn this off. Having this selected, I actually created this Optima quote. Now, I can deselect it and say, hey, look, I need this paragraph to have the same formatting. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to click on Optima quote. And all of a sudden, we notice that this paragraph that I had selected just because I clicked on Optima quote took the same exact formatting of this one. My point is, in order to create a style is as simple as you create the formatting and then you go and create a new paragraph or character if this applies to a word. Or, you know, if you notice there are quite a bit, if you go under styles here, you'll see that there is also, if you're dealing with tables, that is what I was explaining to you what tables are earlier. They're kind of like an Excel sheet, kind of a rigid grid. If you're dealing with table, you can see that you can create cell styles as well. I mean, certain cells will, for example, have always a pink background. You can make one and then make a cell style and apply it across. You can create object styles. That is, let's say you have a certain graphic that has a drop shadow or has a graphic element. If you make it into a style, it will apply over and over again. So any of these palettes works the same way I just show you with the paragraph, by which you format it something, you have it selected, create the new style, and then you go and select something that doesn't have that formatting and click on the style you made. So if I go in here and I click on Optima quote, now it's going to be Optima size 11, leading 15, and tracking 5. So any questions on that? This is styles, and they're incredibly, incredibly helpful to work effectively, work very quickly. I'm going to actually